My brothers and sisters across the great continent of Africa, before you call me your leader. Call me your brother, before you call me a soldier. Call me a servant, and before you see me through the lens of your religion, hear me through in my voice. 'Cause what I bring to you today is not politics. It is not a speech. It is a cry from the depths of a heart that is tired, not weak, but tied up, seen a continent with the voice of a lion forced to whisper like a beggar. Africa is bleeding, but not from war alone. She bleeds from the silence between neighbors, the suspicion between tribes, and the cold distance between the faithful, those who call on Jesus, and those who call on Allah. And I ask you sincerely why, who taught us to hate the hands that reach out in prayer, just because the language of their devotion sounds different from Tad also, who made us believe that a Muslim in Mali and a Christian in Congo were enemies by design, who planted the seeds of suspicion so deep that even shared suffering cannot uproot them. Let me tell you, it was never God. It was never Jesus. It was never Muhammad. It was never the Spirit, nor the Prophet, nor the Scripture. It was men with pens and guns, borders and flags, power and profit. It was empires that came with religion in one hand and tire a sword in the other, not to save us but to spite us. And once we were divided, they fed on us like vultures, picking at the flesh of our unity while we fought over crumbs and creeds. Today I speak not just as the president of a nation, but as a son of this soil, a man who has walked through markets where mosques echo the call to prayer, beside churches singing praises. I've seen Muslims feed Christian orphans. I've seen Christians defend their Muslim neighbors from death, and I've seen men who belong to need sacrifice everything for both. So who told us we are at war with each other? I speak today not to condemn but to awaken, because our real enemy is those who control the loans, the weapons, the propaganda, the nosses in the trade. Rightest they know something we keep forgetting. A divided Africa is a conquered Africa. They fear not our faith but our unity. They do not tremble when we pray, but when we pray together. They do not lose sleep over our fast or our feasts, but they panic at the sight of a continent where Christians and Muslims lock arms, not horns, where we defend each other, not doubt each other, where we realize the covenant freedom are not meant to be fought over, but fought for side by side today. I ask you to put down the sword of suspicion, to bury the politics of fear, to risen not as a Muslim, not as a Christian, but as an African, who refuses to be a pawn in a game rigged long before you were born. The time has come. The time has come to expose the lie that has kept us weak, to unlearn the hatred handed to us in the name of God, to reject the poison gift of division, and instead embrace the sacred power of unity, because our division is their weapon, but our unity will be our salvation. Faith was never the enemy. Division was my beloved sons and daughters of Africa. Take a long, hard look in the mirror. The history holds before us. Let us ask ourselves a sacred question. What is it that truly divides us? Is it truly faith? Or is it what has been done in the name of faith? Look closely when you peel back the layers of pain, pride, and propaganda. When you look past the robes, the crosses, the crescent, the headsk, and the hymn books. What you will find is not enemies. You will find human beings, flesh, blood, children of the same sun, carved from the same dust, breathing the same air, wounded by the same betrayals, and yearning for the same freedom. No, my people, faith was never the enemy. Division it was division that made neighbors forget each other's names. It was division that turned prayers into politics and houses of worship into fortresses of fear. It was division that transformed mothers into mourers and fathers into refugees, and who gave us this division hoofered it like a poison chalice, smiling as they watched us drink. It was not God, it was not the angels, it was not the prophets. It was colonial administrators who drew lines on maps and said, "This village is Muslim and this one is Christian." It was missionaries and merchants who came with holy books and hidden contracts. It was foreign governments who armed both sides of our conflicts and then called us savages when we bled. It was intelligence agencies who lit fires between us, then offered buckets full of fuel and drank the poison we sipped from the cup of division until we forgot who we were, until we forgot that, long before we were Christian and Muslim, we were African. Long before the Bible or the Quran, we had justice, we had peace, we had Ubuntu, we had community, we had respect for elders and a fierce defense of the innocent. We had spiritual codes that taught us to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and protect the stranger when Christ preached love. Africa already knew it when the prophet spoke of charity and justice. Africa already lived it. So why do we now act like our religions are at, or let me speak truth now, even if it burns some of the worst betrayals? In Africa, were not by soldiers in uniform, but by priests who blessed colonizers and imams who sided with invaders, churches built with stolen wealth, mosques silent in the face of injustice, faith twisted into fear, spiritual power bought and sold like cattle. And yet desperate, all of this faith itself remain pure because God does not divide. Men do what does empire does. Fear does establish. True faith calls us higher. True faith teaches us to see the face of God in the eyes of those we do not understand. True faith commands us to protect the weak, to uplift the orphan, to shelter to the widow, no matter what name they use to cry out to the heavens. And that is why I say to you, our problem is not faith. It is the manipulation of faith. It is not prayer. It is the political weaponization of prayer. It is not doctrine, it is the exploitation of doctrine to maintain control. For too long African blood has been spilled by African handshakes, believing God is on their side while the true enemy laughs. From the shadows we must not be fooled again. We must not fight the battle of Rome, London, Paris, or Washington on African soil using African bodies and African souls. The Christian who kneels beside a child with no food and offers them bread is my brother. The Muslim who defends the innocent from injustice is me sister. The traditional healer who prays for peace is my kin. The atheist who fights for the dignity of his people is my ally, because the enemy is not the label. The enemy is the lie. And here is that lie that you must hate, what you do not fully understand. But let me tell you the truth. The one thing our enemies fear more than anything else is when a Christian and a Muslim side by side realize they were never meant to hate each other. That is the moment liberation begins. That is the moment the chains fall. That is the moment we stop being pansy and start being a people. So today I say this to every young African listening to my voice, to look not at the label, but at the heart. Do not let someone else's history write your future. Do not inherit their hatred. You are not born with it. You were taught it. You can unlearn it. Your faith is not your prison. It is your power. Let it unite, not divide. Because Africa's redemption will not come when we have the same religion. It will come when we protect each other despite our religions. It will come when we protect each other despite our religions. It will come when we say, my neighbor is Sakuravan. If we pray in different languages, it will come when we say to the world, you will no longer divide us, because our unity is no longer negotiable. The real war is for your mind, my beloved brothers and sisters. What if I told you that the most dangerous battlefield is not the one littered with bullets and bombs, but the one inside your own mind? What if I told you that the most effective colonization is the one that doesn't require chain stories? For centuries, Africa has been physically looted. Its gold, its diamonds, its oil, its cocoa, its uranium, all stolen beneath flags that promise civilization and progress. But that was just the beginning now. The target is not your land. It is your consciousness, not your bodice. It is your beliefs, not your wealth, but your identity. This, my people, is the real war, and it is waged silently through education systems that teach you to hate your history, through media networks that show you the worst of yourself every single day, through advertisements that convince you that beauty is only European, that power is only Western, that development means becoming less African. It is in the cartoons that our children watch where the hero never looks like them. It is in the textbooks that praise colonizers. But silence the voices of our own prophets and revolutionaries. It is in the universities that teach African students how to build someone else's economy but not their own. This is the war, a war. For your mind, a war. Where victory is not measured in bodies, but in beliefs. Because when a people begin to believe they are inferior, don't need to enslave them, they will enslave themselves. They will import what they already praise, the languages that once silenced their ancestors. They will burn down their own markets to build foreign supermarkets. They will burn down their own markets to build foreign supermarkets. They will change their names, bleach their skin, and mock their own spirituality. All in the name of modernity, my people. This is not progress. This is mental occupation. We have been taught that intelligence speaks English with the British accent. We have been taught that leadership wears a European suit. We have been taught that wisdom comes from Harvard, not from the lips of our grandmothers. We have been taught that God listens more when our prayers are in Arabic or Latin than when they rise in our mother tongues. But let me tell you the sacred truth: Africa will never be free until the African mind is free. No constitution can protect the people who secretly believe they are second as humans. No election can liberate a nation that still sees its oppressor as its savior. No foreign aid can fix a self-hatred that has been passed down like a family heirloom. So we ask you, who told you that Africa is destined to be poor? Who told you that your culture is backward? Your beliefs are primitive. Your ancestors were fools. Was it your God? Was it your prophet? Was it your conscience? Or was it your colonizer? Because every lie begins with a voice, and every revolution begins with choosing whose voice you will believe. You see, they no longer need chains. They don't need chakras. They don't need a stasis, soldiers on every corner. All they need is to control what you think. All they need is to flood your screens with noise, your schools with propaganda, your politics with confusion. And then you'll do their work for them. You will fight your brother and call it tribalism. You will mock your sister and call it culture. You will vote for puppets and call it democracy. You will bait for crumbs and call it diplomacy. This is the trap, and the only way out is truth. You must know who you are, or you will be told who you are. You must reclaim your right to define your identity, your destiny, your dreams. Because if we lose the battle for our minds, we lose everything. That is why I say to you, not as a president, but as a son of this soil, liberate your mind before it is too late. Start by questioning everything that teaches you to hate your own skin, your own roots, your own potential. Start by unlearning the lies. Start by embracing the sacred power of who you are, because Africa's strength is not in her soul, it is in her soul, and the enemy knows it. That is why they fight to steal it. But if we wake up, if we choose truth over illusion, dignity over dependency, memory over manipulation, then no one can stop us. No one is the manufactured conflicts divide, distract, destroy my brothers and sisters across the continent. Let me now speak of the ugliest weapon they use against us, a weapon ordered in the borders they drew, older than their banks, their Bibles, their bullets. It is the weapon of division. They did not just steal our gold, they fractured our souls. They did not just take our land, and they poisoned our relationships. And now we bleed by our own hands while they watch. And prophet, tell me who benefits when a Christian village and a Muslim village burn each other's homes? Who wins when a Fani farmer is turned against a dog, and herder who gains when one African flag goes to war against another? African flag flying above a line drawn by Europeans with rulers and pens. We don't manufacture the weapons. We import them. We don't own the news channel. Swear. Consume them. We don't plan the conflicts, so react to them. These wars, these riots, these so-called ethnic clashes, they are not accidents. They are designed by those who fear an Africa that is united, designed by those who tremble at the power of one. 4 billion people who finally look each other in the eye and say, "You are not my enemy." This is the strategy they have always used. Divide, this frack destroy. They divide you by religion, yet they do business with no religious loyalty. They divide you by language. They speak one language when signing oil contracts. They divide you by triads. They unite in every boardroom. When it comes to exploiting your land, they distract you with rumors, with fear, with headlines crafted to ignite old wounds. Then when chaos erupts, they arrive with solutions, peace talks, loans, troops conditions. And in that moment we forget that they lit the fire, then charged us for the water. Africa has become a theater where they write the script and we play the tragic roles. The Muslim is cast as the terrorist, the Christian, as the crusader, the youth, as the protester, the elder, as the outdated, the woman as the victim, the rebel, as the criminal. Meanwhile, the real criminals shake hands in air-conditioned rooms planning, held to O'Neill tomorrow. But here is the truth they hope you never hear. The African Christian and the African Muslim are not enemies. They are siblings, two believers kneeling before the same Creator, just in different languages. On different days, when? Did the God of Abraham command us to kill each other? When did the prophet or the Christ bless our divisions? They never did. But the colonizers did, the arms dealers did. The intelligence agencies did, the puppet presidents and the global bankers, they all did. They whispered lies into the cracks of our pain. They turned our temples into battlefields, our memories into weapons. And now if we are not careful, our children will grow up, believing that division is tradition, that hate is heritage. But it is a lie. Our true tradition is solidarity. Before their maps, we traded. Cross regions before their borders. We shared language, cattle, poverty, peace before their armies. We welcomed strangers as kin. Before their scripts, we sang the same songs to the same stars. Our ancestors were not perfect, but they were not fools. They knew that survival demanded unity. Not uniformity, but unity of purpose. And so I say this to every imam and every priest, every sheikh and every pastor: your pulpits must no longer be battlegrounds. They must become bridges. Preach not against each other, but for each other. Preach not to divide, but to defend the truth. Preach not for foreign approval, but for ancestral honor. To the youth, refuse to be the foot soldiers in someone else's war, that refuse to be the match that lights their fire. Refuse to become the story that justifies their intervention. You are not pawns. You are not a statistics. You are not hashtags. You are the generation that can end the strategy of divide, distract, destroy. 'Cause once we choose our courageous pan-African interfaith, an aerial game ends. The West cannot exploit a people who speak to each other. The East cannot manipulate a people who pray together. The profiteers cannot fuel conflict when the masses refuse to fight each other. Soon say together, "My faith is not a weapon. My neighbor is not. My enemy, my identity is not for sale." From Lagos to Khartoum, from Bamako to Mogadishu, from Kinshasa to Kigalime, we finally see through the smoke of their dis, the fire they lit to burn us. May it now light our path to awakening faith, beyond borders, healing the fractured spirit of Africa. My beloved sons and daughters of Africa, now that we have unmasked the weapon of division, we must ask, how do we heal? How do we restore what was broken not by nature, but by design? How do we move beyond the pain of our past into the promise of our future? Let me begin with this truth. Faith is not a border. Faith is a bridge. The child, crying in Somalia, feels hunger the same way the child in Ghana does. The widow in the Central African Republic mourns her husband with the same tears as the one in Ethiopia. And when bombs fall, they do not ask if you are Christian or Muslim. They simply destroy. Yet, for too long our faith has been exploited to mark territories. Our mosques and churches, which should be sanctuaries, have too often become Babel grounds of influence lit. Us remember before Africa was carved up into colonies, before faith became a political tool. We believed in one God in different tongues. We believed in community and hospitality and the dignity of every soul. We believed that to welcome the stranger was to honor the divine. Africa was not waiting for salvation. Africa was already sacred. It was our hearts that carried the spirit of unity. It was our soil that whispered ancient prayers long before foreign flags arrived. It was our elders who taught reverence just for a creator, but for creation itself. What colonization did was not simply physical, it was spiritual. They told us that our way of worship was inferior. They told us that our rituals were savage. They made us ashamed of our names, our drums, our ways of kneeling. And then once our faith was fractured, they inserted themselves as mediators between us and God, between us and each other. But I say to you today, the divine does not recognize colonial maps. God does not speak only Latin, or Arabic heaven, does not issue visas based on denomination, whether you call him Allah or Yahweh, whether you bow on Fridays or kneel on Sundays, whether you recite the Quran or sing psalms. You are seen, you are heard, you are loved, and so the healing begins not in conferences, but in our conscience, not in decorations, but in our decisions, not by waiting for Rome or Mecca, by looking into the eyes of our neighbor and saying, I see you, brother, I honor you, sister. Your faith does not threaten my need, enriches it. Because when the Christian child shares his bread with a Muslim friend, a new Africa is born when the imam visits the church to mourn a village elder. A wound is stitched when the pastor protects a mosque from violence. A generation is awakened. That is not weakness, that is divine strength. It is easy to fight for your own. It is divine to fight for those who are different. And if we truly believe in God, and we must also believe in justice, in dignity, and in peace. 'Cause any faith that breeds hatred is not faith, that is fear. Dress and sacred robes. Let our new theology be one of unity. Let the Christian mother know that when her son is saved from a flood by a Muslim man, it is still a miracle. Let the Muslim farmer whose cattle are healed by the prayers of a Christian woman see it as grace. Let the village that holds both a mosque and a church treat both not as rivals, but as anchors of hope. The world will try to divide us again. There will be provocations, false flag attacks, propaganda, and whispers of betrayal. But we must learn to see beyond the fire. We must become the generation that prays with each other, not just for each other. And we must teach our children that religion is a lamp, not a sword, a light to guide, not a flame to burn, because only when the Christian and the Muslim, the animist and the atheist, the priest and the sheikh, only when they stand side by side, hand in hand, eyes on the horizon, only then will Africa finally rise, not just in power but in spirit, and make no mistake my people. The world watches when Africa prays together. The world trembles when Africa unites beyond faith. The world cannot manipulate what it can no longer divide. So let the mosques echo with hope. Let the churches ring with courage. Let our prayers, different in sound but identical in soul, rise like incense above the wounds of history, and let this be our creed. I am African first. I am my brother's keeper. I will not kill in the name of God. I will love in the name of truth, that is the healing, that is the call, that is the future. The message they fear when unity becomes power. There is a reason they fear your unity. It is not your resources that keep them up at night, though they steal them. It is not your growing number stuff. They count every birth. It is not your protests or even your votes. What they fear most is the day you will finally stand together. Because unity, my brothers and sisters, is the one force no bullet can destroy, no policy can erase, no deck can suppress. Unity is not the slogan. It is not a hashtag. It is not something you wear on a t-shirt or chant in a crowd. It is a fire that burns quietly until it consumes everything that once divided us, and when it does, they panic. Why? Because their entire system, this modern-day empire manipulation, was never built to control a united people. It was built to manage chaos, to divide with precision, to rule by confusion. When you are divided, they rule by default. They pit Christian against Muslim, tribe against tribe, youth against elders, men against women, Fuan against Anglophone, until we become so fractured. We forget the enemy was never each other, but when you begin to see past those illusions, when the Fana shares bread with the Mosi, when the Muslim joins hands with the Christian in prayer, when the youth no longer blame their elders, but honor their wisdom, that is the moment the mask slips from the face of power, because now the old tricks went to work. The IMF exploit to people who think has won. The UN can't offer false peace to a continent that has found internal peace. Foreign military bases can't justify the presence in a land that is not at war with itself. Unity makes you ungovernable by those who never had the right to govern you in the first place. And let us be clear. They do not fear our weapons. They fear our awakening. They fear African Christians and Muslims meeting, not to debate scripture, but to draft a common future. They fear the old wounds being closed, not by silence, but by reconciliation. They fear when the youth are no longer entertained by distractions, but empowered by vision. They fear when the farmer in Burkina Faso, the trader in Nigeria, the miner in Congo, the teacher in Saga, all begin to realize they are one body, that an injury to one is an injury to all, and that, beloved, is revolution. Not the kind that burns buildings, but the kind that builds nations. It's the kind of revolution that does not beg for seats at their tables, but builds its own, the kind that doesn't need validation from the West or the East, because it is anchored in the heart of Africa herself. We must now teach our children this simple truth, that the greatest act of resistance is love, that unity is not weakness, it is warfare of the spirit, that Africa's rebirth will come, not with a bond, but with a bond that crosses borders, languages, religion, skin, tones, a bond forged not in bloodshed but in covenant. That is theme. Sedge they fear. And this is what I say to the youth of Africa: let them fear. It let them tremble at your unity. Let them panic at the sound of your togetherness. Let them hear your prayers rising as one voice, in no chaos but in clarity, because when we speak as one, the world must listen. When we walk as one, the mountains move. When we believe as one, destiny bows. We are no longer many fragments fighting alone. We are a force they cannot name, and a future they cannot start. So let us reason, not as victims of a system, but as authors of a new story. Let us be a generation that proves that Muslims and Christians can dream the same dream, that tribes can blend into nations, that languages can become songs of unity, not walls of separation. Let us become the answer to the division they so carefully engineered. Because when we unite in purpose, and when we align in pain and rise in purpose, then the world will witness what they thought was impossible: a free, dignified, unstoppable Africa. And that, my brothers and sisters, is not just a fear to them, it is a nightmare. Let us become that nightmare by being each other's strength, not weakness. Let us become the miracle they never saw coming. The last wall, how religion could save or shatter Africa. There remains one final wall, a wall not made of stone, bob, wire, colonial borders, not written in the constitutions or buried in foreign treaties. No, this wall is made of fear, built by misunderstanding and held together by the heavy hands of history. It is the war between faiths, between Muslim and Christian, between the mosque and the church, between the children of the same soil. And if we do not break this wall down ourselves brick by brick, they will weaponize it to shatter us completely. My dear African brothers and sisters, this is not a metaphor. This is the last weapon in their arsenal, because everything else is failing. The economic chains are being exposed. Their political puppetry is unraveling their media. All lies no longer control our minds, and so now they reach for religion, not to heal us, but to divide us, not to bring us closer to God, but to drive us farther apart, they plant seeds of suspicion. They whisper that your neighbor's prayer is a threat, that salvation is only for one tribe, that peace must come through. Domination, they say. The Muslims want to take over, or they whisper that Christians will erase your culture. And while we argue over scriptures, they loot our gold. They write new contracts and sell your children's water for 50 more years. Tell them what God would be pleased. With this we kneel before the divine, but do not recognize the divine in each other. We fast and pray while ignoring the poverty of the child in front of us. We memorize verses but forget the voice of love behind them. Religion, if misused, becomes the most powerful tool of the colonizer. Because when they chained our ancestors, they broke the body. But when they divided our faith, they broke the soul. And to this day that fracture remains. But it does not have. To Africa is the mother of faith. It was in Africa that the Holy Family once sought refuge. It was in Africa that early Christians found strength. It was in Africa that Islam flourished with dignity and grace. This soil has cradled saints and scholars. This continent has been blessed by revelation after revelation. So why then must we of all people be at war with each other in the name of the same God? What irony is this Pope, that we allow those who do not believe in either faith to manipulate both? Let us say it clearly, there is no faith in Africa that teaches hatred. No faith that commands us to destroy our neighbor. No, God that delights in bloodshed between his children. This is the moment of decision, because the wall of religious division is not just dangerous, is final if we allow it to grow. We will never see unity. We will never see development top. We will never see freedom. But if we tear it down, stone by stone, word by word, prayer by prayer, we will unleash the most powerful force in African history, a united people, under one God, walking different paths, but toward the same horizon. Imagine an Africa where imams and pastors build hospitals together, where churches feed Muslims during Ramadan, and mosques shelter Christians during crisis, where interfaith youth movements build communities instead of burning them, where our children are taught to see differences, not as threats, but as treasures. That is not a fantasy, it is a destiny. If we choose it, the West will not help us build this future, because a united Africa is their greatest fear. And a spiritually united Africa, that is a miracle with consequences. It means fewer arms sold. It means no more proxy wars. It means the collapse of their narrative of failed states and tribal conflicts. It means our people begin to think for themselves, act for themselves, believe for themselves. So today, I quote on our religious leaders: be more than priests and imams. Be more than teachers of text. Be healers. Be bridge wielders. Be protectors of peace, not prisoners of politics. This is not the time for sermons that divide. This is the time for revelations that liberate. To the USA, do not inherit the hatred of. Your ancestors do not carry the grudges of wars. You did not start. Be the generation that ends what others could not. Be the voice that says, enough, talk enough, death, enough division, enough manipulation. Let your mosque and church stand side by side, not as monuments of conquest, but as symbols of coexistence. Let your prayers risen, not to compete, but to complete each other, because only then can Africa's fragments, but as one holy flame, and perhaps, yes, perhaps today's God will smile again upon this continent, not because we all speak the same words, but because we finally understood their meaning. A call to unity. Let us not pause, not in fear, not in defeat, but in reverence. Because this moment, is not just the end of a message, it is the beginning of a movement. My beloved brothers and sisters, across this sacred continent, Africa is not cursed. Africa is not weak. Africa is not divided. She is only asleep, but even lions rest before they rise. And now she's rising. We have been lied to. We have been wounded. We have been separated by flags, by faith, by foreign philosophies, but the blood that runs through us is the same, the soil beneath our feet. Bears the footsteps of kings and prophets, warriors, and saints our ancestors cry out from the dust. Do not forget who you are. Do not bow to those who once bowed your backs. Do not let what was planted in division become your destiny. You see, they thought they could break us. They thought they could bury us drown us in lies, poison us with hate. But they forgot the most powerful truth ever whispered in the winds of Africa. We are the ones we've been waiting for, not the UN, not the IMF, not the former colonizer. We, the African people, are the solution to our own suffering. But we cannot rise in fragments. We cannot build a new world on a rubble of religious suspicion. We must rise in faith, not the faith that divides, but the faith that unites, uplifts, and redeems. And so I declare this now to every listener, whether you kneel on Fridays or Sundays, whether you fast in Ramadan or during Lent, whether you call him Allah Yahweh or speak to him in silence, you are my brother, you are my sister, you are my destiny, you are my defense. So this unity is what they fear. They fear in Africa, where the Quran and the Bible are not used as weapons, but as bridges. They fear the day when a Muslim child and a Christian child look into each other's eyes and say, "We are not enemies. We are Africa." That day is not far off. It is born in your heart right now. It is carried in your voice. It is waiting in your hands, and when you act, it becomes unstoppable. So I say to the youth of Africa, speak for it, unite. Let your generation be the one that ends what slavery started. Let your prayers shake the heavens, not with war cries, but with songs of peace. To our imams, pastors, and priests, preach not to protect your flock from each other, but to prepare them to walk together into destiny. To our elders, share your wisdom, not your wounds. Give us your blessings, not your burdens. To our children, grow without the chains we wore. Dance in freedom. We never knew pray and joy. We only dreamed of. And to the foreign powers, to the architects of the vision, the brokers of fear, the hands behind the curtain, we say this: your time is up. Your schemes are known to your lies attired. Africa will no longer play the role you assigned her. We will no longer be pawns in your geopolitical chessboard. We will be the players, the poets, the prophets of our own story, and our story beginning today will be written in the ink of unity, sung in melody of faith, and carved into history by the hands of the people. So let the drums beat again, not for war, but for welcome. Let the bells ring not for sorrow, but for solidarity. Let the calls to prayer rise beside gospel choirs. Let the fire of Africa's soul burn bright, not in rage, but in righteous resolve. Let the world remember Africa was divided by force, but she will be healed by faith, and she will rise again by love. So we close with one final prayer, not from any one religion, but from the heart of a continent, long denied her voice. O God, of our fathers, God of peace, justice and truth, unchain our minds, heal our wounds, unite our hands. Let no tongue speak hate in your name again. Let no child die for a flag, not of their choosing, and let this land once paged now be planted with peace, prosperity, and power in your name, however we call you. Let Africa live, Amina. Mean, so shall it be.